Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Friday, September 13th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 110 is Transistor.
You met these things. They do not have a sense of humor. They will track you down, wipe you out, and take whatever's left of me. Back to those 2-bit Camerata pieces of trash. Look, whatever you're thinking, do me a favor. Don't let me go.
Transistor is the second game to come out of Supergiant Games. It comes with many of the things that make something a Supergiant project. It's got incredible, responsive combat with tons of room for player expression and refinement of unique play styles. There's beautiful world design with evocative scenery and background lore expanded upon via a dynamic narrator character that just sucks you into the game, and who can forget the absolutely brilliant soundtrack from Darren Korb, highlighted by the captivating vocal performances from Ashley Barrett. Yep, it's another Supergiant Games title alright, and I love it like all the rest. The game follows an ironically silent protagonist named Red. She was one of the most acclaimed singers in the sprawling city of Cloudbank, but an attack at one of her concerts ripped her voice from her. In the aftermath, she locates a man that had been impaled by a sword that sort of resembles a microchip which can absorb information from those it kills, compiling their psyches into a database that empowers the sword and its wielder, or something. Look, it's very cool, and this is fantasy. It doesn't have to make sense. So from there, you grab the sword and track down the people behind your own assassination attempt. It's a cabal that runs through people in high places throughout your society, but most of the enemies you face aren't grunts, goons, or lackeys. The actual threat is a computer Terminator-like faction called the Process, and they've integrated these people of power into their ranks. The Process are able to deploy enemies throughout the city at every turn as their influence spreads further and further with the different districts descending into chaos. I don't want to spoil all of the story for this one, but the ending is quite the revelation, and I think really worth checking it out from a player perspective. The story is good, and I'll complete my New Game Plus eventually to get more achievements and stuff seeing it through again, but we're really here for the combat. There's really two ways to play this game. It's simultaneously a very interesting, fast-paced action combat game, and also this weird, very unique, almost turn-based strategy game. You can assign up to 4 abilities on your action bar and can use them in real time to fight enemies. Chaining specific attacks together will allow for combos with bonus damage, and there's loads of strategies you can employ. Or you slow it down a whole lot and press the space bar. The action pauses, and you can program a whole bunch of actions to then do in rapid succession. Everything you do takes up space on an action meter that gets spent when you send it, including your movement. The tricky thing here, however, is that after you do all of that stuff, you can't do anything but run around while the meter recharges, leaving you very exposed to all of your enemies, including ones that just spawned as a result of all of the carnage you just wrought. Many enemies spit out these little dudes when they die, and you can pick them up, but if you don't within the few seconds after they spawn, they turn into more process enemies, creating more problems for yourself. I really prefer this slower, more strategic way of playing, and that leans into the greatest strength of the game. Apart from the music, by far my favorite thing about Transistor is the extent to which you can customize your character's loadout. Throughout the game, you'll discover and unlock loads of new abilities, and each has different effects that you can work into your 4-slot action bar. But there's so much more than just that. Each and every ability can modify another one to create some additional bonus, leading to exponential growth in the amount of options you have for your strategy. The 4 you pick as your actual abilities on the action bar have, at least later in the game, 2 slots that you can use to modify them, but that's not all either. There's also a number of overall passive slots that provide even more things that your abilities can do, changing things about the whole way you interact with combat. Maybe you want to be stealthy and fast, or maybe tanky and hard-hitting, or you want to get right behind your opponents and kill them real quickly with backstab bonuses, or maybe there's a very specific combo you're looking to pull off. You can, even though you're using a sword, you can kinda do ranged combat and play keep away. The sky's the limit, but even the best laid plans of mice and men oft go awry, and that's certainly true in Transistor. Each time you would die, instead you lose one of your 4 abilities on your action bar. You can't load another one in until you find a terminal to throw your sword into, which also works as progress to refresh your locked out abilities. So you might need to be really flexible and adapt as things go wrong and you take too much damage. It can get really challenging when your house of cards starts to crumble, and that's one of the most interesting parts of the game to me, when you have to quickly think of a new plan because plan A is locked up, or even plan B is locked up. If all of that's too simple for you though, you can even find different things that you can turn on to increase the challenge of the game, like making it so you lose 2 abilities each time you would die, for example. In exchange, you get an experience bonus so you'll level up faster. By far, the most interesting fights are the boss fights. They have a lot of unique mechanics, and there's a lot of really crazy things. You trying to run around and dodge things while also trying to figure out how you can get the right angles of attack, and it's so good, and I love it. I do love the combat in Transistor, and with the New Game Plus feature, you can also get a few playthroughs worth of very different and new strategies to see the game with fresh eyes. Though sometimes, if you were really insistent on doing it differently each time, you're going to run into some struggles. But that's partially because the game is designed for you to be so adaptive and flexible as you start to lose abilities if you took too much damage and all of that stuff. It all works together to be really cohesive, so you can see a lot of game in one playthrough, or if you really like it, you can just dig into every little possible combination over a few. And I'm very okay with playing the game a bunch of times because it's so pretty. The aesthetics of Cloudbank are remarkable, and while we often only see the streets in small chunks, the story beats where you just kind of sit back for a bit and view the world around you are quite enjoyable. And there's loads of little world building stuff, like these news terminals that are about half the time propaganda against you and others, and the other half of the time little surveys and like takeout orders that prompt some narration about the society Red lives in. It's very much the Supergiant formula, and I'm cool for them to lean on that formula for forever if they want. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 109th favorite game where I crash cars on purpose.